Dreaming of a better sleep? Tossing and turning is not your destiny. And Ollie is here to help. Ollie invites you to sink into sweet, sweet slumber to improve your mental and physical health and overall wellness. More than just melatonin, Ollie's ingredients help you unwind your mind for a delightfully dreamy drift off. Sleep is on the way at Ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
Welcome to Whine with HR. I'm Jules.
Hey there, I'm Trish.
Lawyers turned HR professionals. Through our company, Monarch Endeavors, we guide employers through their oh shit moments with their employees.
In this podcast, we will discuss some of the most common and commonly frustrating HR problems while enjoying our favorite adult beverage, wine.
So sit back, grab a glass if you choose, and join us as we think about and drink about all things HR. Welcome to this episode of Whine with HR. This episode is for the ladies. It's a ladies' right, and it's worth the fight. Yeah, it's a ladies' right. Oh, yeah.
I'm dancing. I'm not singing, but I'm dancing. Got my thumbs up and my fists up.
This episode is also for the men who support us and are our allies. But in honor of National Women's History Month, which just passed in March, we are talking about the unfortunate fact that a significant pay gap still exists between men and women in the workforce. This seems like a depressing topic or a rage-inducing one, depending how you're feeling.
Yes.
But as always, we will have some tips for women to empower them to ask for what they deserve. So, Trish, before we dive in, what are your initial thoughts on this topic that I know we are both very passionate about?
Julie, I can't help but think of the very last thing you said, which is we're going to have some tips to empower women to ask for what they deserve. One of the things that I have a lot of experience in, as you know, is recruiting. Mm-hmm. And it amazes me how many women just accept what they're offered. Whereas a lot of men out there will say, oh, that's a great offer. However, this is what I want. So it's incredibly, incredibly important topic. And I'm super excited. I'm going to try to keep my fists down, like you said, rage inducing. And yeah, thank you to all those men out there that support us. So before we dive in, Julie, as usual, what are you drinking today?
So I am drinking one that I have already had on the show before, but it's one of my staples now, and the bottle was open. So
that's always good.
Yeah, I decided I should not open a brand new bottle when we had a bottle open. So I am drinking Route 1. It's a Sauvignon Blanc from Chile, and it has become one of my favorites. It's $9.99.
So, nice. That's a Trisha bottle of wine.
I know. It's a lower price point for me. It's got all of the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc qualities, but it's a little bit less bitey on the end. So I just really enjoy it.
I love Chilean wines, period.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
So one of these times when you're here, we'll have it in person so you can try it.
Hey, guess what? I'll be there soon.
I know, yay. So, Trish, what are you drinking today?
So, I actually do not have wine today. I am, what did I say? Day 16 of COVID.
Yes.
I'm fortunately feeling better, but decided wine probably not the best idea.
Yeah.
But to keep me from wanting to fight, I have some lovely Baileys.
Nice.
And coffee.
Nice.
Yes, a little warmth on the throat in case I sound a little froggy. And some wonderful Baileys, one of my favorite things.
So. Wonderful.
Yes, and of course everybody knows Baileys.
Yes. No explanation needed. Okay, well, everybody, we wanted to tackle this topic for a few reasons. Number one, Trisha and I are both women, so it's obviously something that we care about. and that we have faced, both of us, in our careers. Number 2, HR is predominantly women. So many of our listeners can benefit from this discussion. And even if you're not a woman, this episode will help you better support the women in your workplace and in your life. And finally, we want to empower women to ask for what they deserve. Like Trisha just said, a lot of times women just accept what they're offered instead of fighting for what they should be getting. And so we want to give you the tools to do that. So later in the episode, we will talk about how to have conversations about compensation. But before we get to that, we, of course, want to give you some stats and some information about the challenges that women are currently facing. So Trisha, I'm going to throw it over to you for the first stat.
Stats? Me?
I know.
The first thing I think we need to start with is a conversation about equal pay day and what it is and why it changes every year. You may not have even noticed that it actually does change every year. There's a reason behind that date changing, and what it is this. That day symbolizes how far a woman needs to work into the next year to equal what a man earned the previous year. So this year, we're at about 14 and a half months. That's how long a woman needs to work to equal what a man makes in 12 months. We're going to reference a lot of articles throughout this particular podcast. So just so you know, this one, that first one comes from a CNN article that we will have a link to in the show notes. All right. So I have another one from the Center for American Progress. This one is from an article called Closing the Gender Pay Gap. It came out just in March. Shocker. When we're talking, it's very, very timely. Current pay gap is 84 cents on the dollar. So what that means is that for every dollar a man is paid, a woman makes 84 cents. Now, if you really want to put this into real numbers that we can actually get our heads around, think of it this way. If a man makes $50,000, then a woman would make $42,000. So $8,000 less. Now, taking it just one step further, because you know me, I got to take it another step further. That means that if the gender gap hadn't existed, now we're in the year 2022, by the way. Most of these stats we're going to give you are from 2022. That's the last available data that we have. Then women working full-time year-round, that is, so full-time year-round, earning the equivalent wage of her male counterpart would have received an additional $9,900 in wages.
Yeah, crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah. And if you think about it compounding year after year after year over a lifetime, a woman is making far, far less.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Read the articles. Look at how much this is. And when you add all of us women together over the years, trillions of dollars.
Yes.
Did I say I was going to stay calm?
Well, since you brought that up, let's give them the numbers. So on average, working women lost more than $1.6 trillion in 2022 as a consequence of the gender wage gap, which is equivalent to 6.3% of the U.S. gross domestic product in 2022. From 1967 to 2021, women experienced a cumulative loss of $61 trillion in wages due to the gender wage gap. That is nearly double the U.S. government debt in 2023. It's a lot of money left behind. A lot of money left behind.
I kind of wish we were like in person live so people could see like my head exploding.
Yes. And just to make things even worse, the pay gap compounds over a woman's lifetime and also as she ages. So let me give you an example. Women who were ages 25 to 34 in 2010 earned 92% as much as men their age, compared with 83% for women overall. But by 2022, so just 12 years later, this same group of women, now ages 37 to 46, earned only 84% as much as men their same age. So not only were they making less to begin with, as they age, they continue to make less and less.
How is that possible? Aren't we supposed to gain money as we gain experience?
That's, allegedly the American dream.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
I want to take these stats just a little bit further because they're already haunting and daunting. But I want to break it down so that people really understand what this looks like. If we start looking at this even by race, I want to take it to that level. The typical American Black woman who works full time year round receives 69 cents for every dollar that the typical white non-Hispanic male made. Now, for Hispanic women, that number goes to 52 cents. And for Native American women, it's 59 cents. Now, here's the thing I want to talk to you guys about, though. As you go through and you check out these articles, once you're all impassioned after you hear us, I want you to understand that these numbers may be different than what you see in some of the research you have done or even some of the research we're providing you. Remember, statistics, you can change a statistic, a percentage, a little bit here and there based on what you're looking at. So when I'm saying working full-time year-round, that's one number. But if you start just looking at the numbers for a person working, period, the average amount they're actually making, that disparity skyrockets.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a huge point, right?
It is a huge point. And it's also worth mentioning that even across articles, because, we've looked at a bunch of articles for this podcast, they are all within a few cents of each other. So they've been pretty consistent.
Yes.
When you look at the numbers, they sadly have not changed much in the last 10 years or more. So yeah. And I think another thing to add, in addition to the additional challenges that our minority sisters face, mothers face additional challenges with the wage gap. Number one, it increases with the number of children that they have. And number two, for mothers, having a child causes a loss of earnings immediately after childbirth that persists over time. And there is no corresponding financial penalty for fathers. So because women tend to be the caregivers, the primary caregivers, they're the ones who exit the workforce, and they're the ones who then are penalized for the caregiving that they took the time to do. But it accumulates over time, setting them back even further.
We need to start talking about a few bright spots. I'm getting really depressed. And this isn't a bright spot, sadly, but I do want to say that we are making progress.
Mm-hmm. We are.
And the problem is that if we continue on this current trajectory, the gap for women working full-time year-round will finally close in 2067. Come on.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so proud that we're making these strides and these efforts, but 2067? All right, Julie, you have one more stat?
I do. It's not a bright spot, though.
Oh, man.
But then we'll get to what can be done about it. So we will get to the light at the end of the tunnel. But this last one I think is important and also brings up an article that just came out today that, Trisha, I'll let you talk a little bit more about. But the Institute for Women's Policy Research found that women earned less than men, not only in all 20 of the largest occupations for men, but also in all 20 of the largest occupations for women. So what does that mean? Among the largest occupations for women, the most egregious pay gaps were among financial managers, so 71 cents on the dollar, retail salespeople, 72 cents on the dollar, education and childcare administrators, 79 cents on the dollar, administrative assistants, 80 cents on the dollar, and managers, so a lot of our listeners, 81 cents on the dollar. So all below the just average gender pay gap of 84 cents on the dollar.
All right, yeah, now I'm really getting depressed.
And what did we find out in that article that you sent to me today? So timely.
So timely, wasn't it, though? So we will have details on this one in the show notes as well. This came from HR Brew, which is one of those things that I subscribe to, and they have a lot of good information. And this particular article talked about CHROs. And here's the interesting part about CHROs. For all of our HR people out there who are aspiring to be a chew, bless you. Figures goes right in line with my COVID. Good Lord. A chief human resource officer. Guess what? Positive. We make up 64% of CHROs. Exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. Here's the problem. Even though we're represented that highly in the C-suite, we're still right about the same exact pay gap as is the rest of the country. So even once we make it to the C-suite, we're still making less.
Yeah, and I thought what was interesting about that article, they didn't go into a ton of detail, but they hinted at it. And I think this is one of the challenges that faces people in HR, male or female. HR, unlike many other of those top positions, we don't have the same incentive structure. So it's not as tied to profits. So, if you've got the CEO, they can tie the CEO's salary to sales or profit margins or whatever the case may be. A lot of what HR does is intangible, and it's also just a cost of doing business. So it's not as directly tied to profits. It can be, but a lot of companies don't see it that way. They continue to see it as just a cost of doing business. And because they view it that way, it doesn't have the same bonus structure, incentive structure, or pay structure that a lot of those other C-suite positions have.
I'm just going to do a little impromptu shout out for us, Jules, because this just gave me a brilliant idea. Y'all, listen to me. We actually can be money makers for the companies.
Absolutely.
We really can. Mm-hmm. It's just about knowing your value and how to present things to the C-suite so that you can show them by doing this, you're going to reduce costs here, here, and here, and therefore increase profitability. So give Julie and I a call and we will help you out with that if you're interested.
Yes.
But truly know your value, know the benefit of what you're doing.
Yes. And we have some more tips on that in this episode as well. But before we get there, let's talk about, for our listeners, what organizations can do sort of at the organizational or manager HR level for the organization as a whole.
Well, you know which one I want to start with because it's one of my favorites, a pay equity audit, right? I love audits. It's one of the things that we can do, and you would do it, of course, organization-wide or managers, if you're like, I really want to make my team equitable, then you can do it within your team as well, if you have access to the information. So you really want to know where your team stands, what people's goals are, and how to help get them there. And if you are doing all of this and having these conversations that we always tell you to have on a daily basis, if you're trying to do one of these audits, it'll be a ton easier because then you will have that comfort level with your teams. They'll know that your goal is equity, that your goal is to do what's best for everyone. And then you'll be able to say, oh, okay, we can have these open and honest conversations, and then make a plan to figure out how to resolve those inequities. And maybe it is in the bonus structures versus the pay structure, right? Maybe it's with opportunities that come up after work. One of my least favorite things. Oh, we're doing a happy hour after work. Well, not everybody can do that. I mean, I love happy hours. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying is not everybody can do that. And if things are done and ideas are created or decisions are made at those happy hours, how many people, especially women, working mothers, are you leaving out?
Absolutely. And one of the reasons we recommend a pay equity audit is you can't solve a problem if you don't know the extent of the problem, right? So if you haven't actually looked at the data and you're just making assumptions that I think everybody's paid pretty fairly, is that true? Maybe it is, and that's great, but maybe it's not true.
Yeah.
Because there are I think it's important to point out there are a lot of sort of innocuous ways that pay inequity happens. Again, it's sort of like going back to implicit bias. It's not like people are sitting maliciously in the corner, at least we hope not, being like, we're going to pay women 84 cents on the dollar, but it's some of the things we're going to talk about. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but it's some of the things we're going to talk about where it just sort of persists because women have been paid less. They come in earning less. And then their bonuses, even if they're getting the same bonus, they're not starting from the same salary. So they just continue to be at a deficit, and it just compounds over time. And it can happen really innocently in an organization.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We need to say that, stress that. Like, it's not always purposeful. Sometimes it is.
Sure.
But these things do happen over time. And it just all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Thus the need for the audit.
Absolutely. Yes. I think another important tip that an organization could explore is what additional benefits they may be able to offer. So one of the things that has really come out of COVID is how important childcare is, particularly to those working mothers. And childcare is not necessarily reliable. It might be a family member, and sometimes that family member is sick or unavailable. It might be a daycare center where they're shut down for some reason, or they go out of business, or they don't have openings. There are all sorts of issues around childcare. And until our society or our legislature does something about that from a global perspective, I think it's important for companies to think about what they might be able to do. Can they offer childcare at their building? Or could they offer a childcare subsidy? Could they offer more flexible work schedules so that, again, it usually tends to fall on women where they can have some flexibility, where they don't have to lose a day of work just because they can't get childcare. Maybe they can work from home for that day, or maybe they can take a training class, or maybe there are things that they can do where they're not losing income just because something outside of their control has happened.
Wow, I love that. and it does remind me completely along the same lines of the fact that oftentimes women, because of what you were just talking about, end up having to leave the workplace. They have to make a choice. They say, okay, what I'm making versus what childcare is costing me, it's not worth it, or it's not worth the hassle, right? So maybe they make a little more. So this is something I really love that suggestion, Jules.
Yeah. And let me just add one thing. In another article we'll put in the show notes from AirSwift called Close the Gender Pay Gap on Equal Pay Day. This is also from 2022. It was reported that 76% of mothers with children under the age of 10 said childcare is one of their top challenges, compared to only 54% of fathers with young children. So that's let's see if I can do math in my head, an extra 22% more.
Yeah. Almost a quarter.
Yeah, exactly. Women are also twice as likely as fathers to worry that their performance is judged negatively because of caregiving responsibilities.
And they are.
They are. That's the reality.
You hear it all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by ShipStation. If you run an e-commerce business, you know how much work it takes to produce something great while dealing with complicated shipping issues. That's why over 130,000 companies have turned to ShipStation, an innovative tool that allows you to focus less on shipping and more on building your brand. With ShipStation, you can manage orders, label printing, reporting, and customer service on one easy-to-use dashboard. You'll reduce warehouse costs with reliable enterprise solutions and save thousands on shipping costs with discounts up to 89% off. Plus, you can effortlessly import orders from everywhere you sell online. So, turn your shipping challenges into opportunities for growth. Go to ShipStation.com and use code POD to sign up for your free 60-day trial. That's ShipStation.com, code POD.
Do you love news about LinkedIn, Indeed, Google, and just about every other recruitment tech company out there?
Hell yeah. I'm Chad.
I'm Cheese.
We're the Chad and Cheese Podcast.
All the latest recruiting news and insights are on our show.
Dripping in snark and attitude.
Subscribe today wherever you listen to your podcasts. We out.
Again, because I love my hiring and onboarding and things like that, I got to talk to y'all about your interviewing or hiring team. What does that look like for you? Is it all men? Is it mostly men? Does it actually represent the workforce you want? A lot of people say that their goals in the workplace, they say inclusion or diversity. But then they don't actually hire for that. They don't actually hire for those different perspectives. They don't think about those diverse perspectives during that interview process. And to make things worse, and look, I love AI, okay? There's some really great things about AI. But one of the things I think people don't realize when they're using AI in their hiring process is there are words. We're the ones who put the words into our AI and tell them what we're looking for, right? If we, even as women who are aware of this, if we're not thinking about the words that we're choosing for our AI can get the idea, oh, this is a more masculine term, or this is a more this kind of perspective. And your AI will start thinking you prefer men over women. Then you hire, say, a man, or you hire a woman and pay her less. Your AI recognizes that and then starts acting accordingly. So this is something I think people really, really need to pay attention to is during that hiring process, what are you doing? What does your team makeup look like? And does it represent where you want to go? Now, that doesn't have to do with pay, but it's still important.
Yes. No, it is.
It does. But
yeah, it is. Because like you said, you're going to get what you expect to get. And if you have, no offense to our male listeners, but if you have a bunch of white men who are doing the hiring, you're probably going to get a lot more white men being hired. And so we need to break into that somehow and get people to look outside of their normal comfort circle.
You just said the words. Men, look, we're not throwing you completely under the bus here. It's that comfort. It's that affinity bias. Oh, they're like me. We went to the same school. We both like football. I mean, hey, or you both like hockey. Yay. Right.
Yeah. Well, yes. And I think another important point is that I feel like there has been this tendency throughout history to disregard a woman's absence from the workforce for the time that she has spent being a caregiver, being a mother, when those are some skills.
Heck yeah, they are.
You want somebody that's primed for management? A mother who has had to manage her kids' schedules, her families, like think of some of our friends who are mothers with their, I'm gonna name drop Deborah here because you all have met her
was
now.
going to. I was totally going to mention her.
You all have heard her now on our, because she guest starred on one of our episodes. But if you saw the spreadsheets that this woman keeps to keep her family.
I don't know how she does it.
Right? Come on. Those are some high-level management skills.
Mad skills.
Yes. And so I think, again, to your point about AI, though, AI doesn't always capture people who don't fit exactly within the typical framework for that particular position. But those are some transferable skills that we just need to keep in mind.
And that's actually one of the things that I'm super proud of. If you are out there and you're reading the articles, finally, we're starting to look at transferable skills, which I think is really going to help women get the jobs. I can't say it's going to help us with the pay gap, but at least we're going to get the jobs and then we can address that pay gap because they really are starting to look more at transferables. So to all of you out there who are driving that initiative in your companies, hoorah.
Yes. Okay. So I have another tip. When companies are looking to fill positions, decide ahead of time what the salary range is going to be versus asking candidates what they currently make or what they made at their last job. So Trisha and I have been preaching this for a long time, but you should base the salary for whatever position you're hiring for on whatever you think that job is worth. It shouldn't be based on what that person made beforehand. And the reason Period. Yes. And the reason for that is because, again, women tend to be paid less. So if you ask a woman what her prior salary was, it's probably going to be lower than a male candidate's. So even if you give her an increase, it's still probably going to be lower than whatever that male candidate's starting salary would have been. And I just want to point out that there are now 22 states and 22 localities that have salary bands. So you cannot ask a candidate what their prior salary was, what their salary history has been when you are interviewing them. So for all of you who are listening, make sure you check your state and local laws to see if that applies to you. But again, just from a holistic view, you should be paying for what the job is worth, not what somebody made in a prior position.
Yes. And if your state doesn't completely ban you asking, remember some of the states that are out there actually say if they refuse to provide it, or if they do provide it, you cannot consider it. That's like telling a jury to disregard what they just heard, right?
Yeah, right.
But it's true. You can't use it when offering them the salary. So just remember that. Make sure you know that your state and local law is out there.
Very good point. Very good point. Trisha, do you have any other tips for organizations as a whole?
Well, you mentioned implicit biases earlier. So I guess the one thing I want to follow up with on that is talking about goal setting. Do you have the same goals for men and women in your company? Or when a man comes in, do you immediately see future manager, right? So make sure that you're paying attention to that. Look at the skills, not the sex of the person. Do you offer women the same client-facing opportunities? Remember what I just said. If a lot of your work is done after hours, at a happy hour, or at a golf course on the weekends, like when we were young, a lot of work was done that way.
Oh, yeah.
Or during the week at a golf course. And we never got invited. And Julie and I are great golfers. At least I'm going to say we are.
Nobody will know because they haven't seen the proof.
Can't help it. Sorry, I had to say it. Do you offer those same opportunities? And then have you made assumptions about whether someone on your team, especially a woman, we've talked to you about this before, making assumptions about whether someone wants to advance. but we're going to take it out of just someone and specifically go to women. Are you thinking because that person is pregnant or said they want to have a family that they don't want to advance? Well, why? Have you talked to them about that? Like, you don't know their goals unless you have a conversation with them. So make sure that you have these open and honest, hey, look, we're back here again, open and honest conversations with people.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered some of the things that organizations can do, managers can do, HR can do. Now we want to shift the focus to our female listeners, our women, our sisters, and what you can do for yourself, given all of the things that we have talked about. So the first thing I am going to say is you have to know the numbers. Number one, you have to know how your organization measures success in your role. So you have to know what that looks like. But you also need to know what male counterparts in the same position you currently hold are making. So if you have male counterparts within the organization that you feel comfortable asking, ask them what they make. If you don't, which that is completely understandable, you can do research industry-wide, also geographically. You can look on Glassdoor, Indeed, salary.com, I think is one of the websites, but you can start to get some range of what you should make. And I do want to point out that a lot of people, this has been conditioned into a lot of us who, have been in the workforce for a while, that you're not allowed to talk or ask about salary, bonuses, compensation. You are. It's actually protected concerted activity under the National Labor Relations Act. So you are allowed to talk about it, and you are allowed to talk about it with your coworkers. And if somebody tries to tell you otherwise, they be wrong.
I just had this conversation with someone on one of my classes. They were saying that they're not supposed to at their work. And I was like, nah, that's not legal.
Nope. So again, you got to know the numbers. You got to know where you stand compared to others so that you know if you are being paid equitably or not.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so going off of what Julie said, if your organization is one of those wonderful places that does have salary ranges or has transparency regarding like salary grades or blocks, this is an amazing opportunity for you because you can actually talk to either your manager or supervisor or someone and find out exactly where you fit within that block. And then ask them, well, what do I need to do? This goes right along with what Julie was just saying. Ask them what you need to do to get to the top of that pay grade, or even better, go to the next one. Now, here's the deal. We're not just asking, hey, what can I do? Willy-nilly. You want measurable, quantifiable things so that when you go to ask to be moved up, or when you ask for that pay raise that we'll talk about in a little bit, you can have quantifiable data to back up your request.
Absolutely. I think this next one is a hugely important point. And I think it's a trap that a lot of women fall into. But do not assume that your bosses are going to notice your work and magically give you a raise.
Oh my God, yes.
Okay? Because again, a company's job, particularly private companies, their goal is to make as much money as possible. So that if they can get more out of you for less, they're not going to give you more just out of the goodness of their heart. Not most companies.
They're not?
No. So ask for what you want. I have a great example of this. One of my dear friends, has been working in a particular department within her company for years. And she last year went to her boss and said, I want you to know I want to advance. So if an opportunity comes up, I want you to consider me. And her boss was a little bit like, oh, Oh, yeah, I didn't realize that, because it seemed like she was very happy in her current role. But it took her saying, no, I want to advance. So, and then when a position came up, she went back to him and she said, I want this. And she got it.
Yes, that's awesome.
It's amazing. But it just illustrates the point that we assume people know what our intentions are, and they don't.
Yeah, it's hard to read someone's mind.
Yeah,
I've tried.
A little bit.
If you are not ready to move up, or maybe it's just not the right time for you, that's okay too. But you know what happens to those who are in that position? Usually you're so good at your job that you start handling the responsibilities for multiple people, multiple positions, not just your stuff. I know y'all are shaking your head. Yes, because you can relate to that one. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to spend some time figuring out how much money you're actually saving the company by doing all of these additional tasks, and ask for more. It's the same thing that Julie and I were talking about just a couple minutes ago, knowing your value and then having the data to back it up. Going in and just saying, I do these things and I deserve more money, probably not going to get you very far. But if you have the hard data, the facts, the figures, really hard to argue against that. Now, if you're asked to take on additional responsibilities and you're kind of going back and forth and you're not sure if you want to do them, but you're like, for a little extra money, I might be willing to do so, then ask. Don't be afraid to discuss compensation. Now, I would be happy to take on those duties as long as I'm fairly compensated for doing so. Can we set up a time to discuss what that compensation would look like? They're going to be blown away. And of course, again, you're going to have the facts and figures to show how it's going to benefit the company and why you deserve that extra money.
I think that is so important because, again, as you said at the beginning of this episode, studies show women have a tendency to just accept the offer they're given. Likewise, we also have a tendency to say yes when we are asked to do more. Oh, yes.
Truth. Oh, yes. I didn't mean that, but yes.
It was kind of perfect. It was kind of perfect. So we continually take on more, but you're doing a favor for your organization when you do that. And you should be fairly compensated for doing so. So it's important to keep that in mind and not just say yes right out the gate. The last tip we have for you is when you are ready, ask for more money. Now, you got to have the data. We've said that multiple times. So you've got to know what your position is worth. You've got to know what value you bring to the organization, and you've got to be able to put that in some tangible terms. We can help you with that if you need help. Then before you go in, set up the appointment and say, don't say, I just want a meeting. Say, I want to talk about my compensation so that they know what is coming. And then practice your pitch. Keep it to the facts. Try to stay unemotional, but sometimes you get emotional and that's okay. So let's say, for example, you start crying in the middle of something because you get upset. Then you just say, yep, exactly. We've all done it. Then you just say, this is how passionate I feel about this. Or this is how strongly I feel about what we're talking about. I feel like you are not valuing the contributions that I am making. And then you stick to your facts. You ask for what you want. Don't let them decide. So don't go in and say, I want more money. Have a number. You got to have a number. And make it higher than what you really want so that you've got some wiggle room.
Negotiation 101.
Negotiation 101. But you gotta know when you go in and you gotta stick to it. And the other thing that I'm going to say about that is when you get to this point where you're going to have that conversation, you've got to be prepared that they may tell you no. And then you have to decide if it is time to start looking for another job. So that is a consequence that might happen. But I think it is better personally to know, because it's an answer. If they're not going to give you what you think you're worth, then that's an answer that requires a response. And that response should be going someplace where they do value what you're worth.
And I'll just say one more thing. And Julie, I love that so much. I really do. For those of you who are at companies where there is no upward growth for you at this point, whether it's the way the company is structured or whether it's just your particular area or profession, don't be afraid to go anyway. Maybe they can't. They truly cannot give you more money because there is no upward mobility. There's nowhere for you to go. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to go elsewhere and look for that next opportunity so that you can continue to grow. If you just say, oh, well, I'm really comfortable here and they're good enough. And yeah, they tried. This is your journey. And if you're ready for it, this is your journey. And so take the bull by the horns and go for it.
Yeah. And the only thing I'll add to that is you can think about things that fall outside traditional compensation that you could, if you really want to stay where you're at. You could ask for more PTO. You could ask for a flexible work assignment. You could ask to work from home 2 days a week. There are things that you can ask for if they absolutely tell you we cannot pay you more. Now, first, I wouldn't accept that right out the gate as a legitimate response. But if you do have access to the figures and they really can, it's a small company, you like their culture, yada, 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 then you might be able to get some other things that will make your life better in lieu of extra dollars.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that very much. That was a great little tip.
All right. So any final thoughts, Trish?
We believe in you. That's all I'm going to say. We believe in you. You have this. Make sure, I know I've said it 100 times already, but you guys know I'm the data girl, right? Have your facts and figures and stats and know your value. You are worth it, and go out there and get what you deserve.
My parting thought is support each other.
Oh, good one.
Women, we face enough challenges. We should never be tearing each other down. We should be helping each other. So if you have benefited from a man or a woman giving you an opportunity, make sure that you pay it forward and you give that opportunity to somebody behind you. And again, I want to thank our male allies. I know this was a very woman-centered podcast, but we do appreciate our allies out there who fight for us and who recognize the gifts that we bring. And we recognize the gifts that you bring as well. So we want to thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please keep focus on this as we get more data coming in the future. Remember, these are 2022 numbers. And one thing Julie and I did not discuss was the impact that COVID had on these numbers. So I will be really interested to see what happens once we get some fresh data.
Absolutely. All right. So Trish, how is your Bailey's tasting?
Amazing as always. I think it helped me sound a little less froggy.
I think it's working its magic. I do. I think it's working its magic.
Way to go, Bailey's.
So I prescribe a Bailey's and coffee in the morning and one at night for the next 5 days. Dr. Julie at your service.
Oh, if only that were true. People are going to be like, oh my goodness, these two.
Yeah. My wine is still great, so I'm still enjoying it very much. So,
all right. I would like to try it when I see you in a week or so.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this episode. We appreciate you as always. If you have suggestions for wine or topics, please feel free to email us. We will put all of the articles in the show notes, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts.
And on social.
Cheers.
Cheers.